Wasn't that a wonderful, wonderful musical?
Yeah.
In fact, it was so good you don't need a sermon, but you're going to get it anyway. Christ is risen.
Christ is risen indeed.
But Thomas said, I want proof. I want proof. It was Easter evening, and when Thomas returned from wherever he had gone, his friends told him excitedly an unbelievable tale. We have seen the Lord, they said. He showed us his hands where the nails had been driven. He showed us his side where the soldier's sword pierced. And Thomas, called Doubting Thomas for centuries, but actually he was honest Thomas, wasn't he? Honestly skeptical, said, well, I want proof. How about you? You want proof? What evidence would convince you, would satisfy you that Christ is risen from the dead? Early skeptics accused the disciples of hiding the body and then making up the story that he'd been raised from the dead. Modern skeptics still accuse the disciples of fabrication. There's a popular book called The Passover Plot, which argues that the disciples were hallucinogenic drug addicts who gave Jesus a cocktail of drugs just before he was crucified, so that when he just appeared to die and he was actually he was drugged out of his mind. They allowed the Roman soldiers to entomb him, and then a couple of days later they retrieved his body, resuscitated him, and put out the absurd rumor that he had been resurrected. Well, what would convince such skeptics that indeed Jesus has been raised from the dead? You want proof? Where do you look? Does the imprint of a body in an ancient linen shroud convince you? Does an empty tomb with linen wrappings lying there convince you? Personally, I don't find it helpful to try to go back in time to prove the resurrection. Too much time has lapsed. Rather than go back and try to explain things to skeptics, let's stay in the present, right here today. You want proof? Look around. Look around. Look around. What do you see? People. What kind of people? A congregation, right? A Christian congregation. We are the evidence of the resurrection. Proof of the resurrection of Christ is the folks who gathered here to worship. We did not create Easter. Easter created us. And we are here because Christ breathed on us. He created us out of nothing. There are no sociological factors that hold us together. We're not of the same age. We're not of the same race. We're not of the same cultural background. We're not of the same educational background. We're not of the same social class. We're not of the same gender. We don't all have the same theology or beliefs or social principles. We're not all Democrats or Republicans. It's only by the grace of God that we're here and connected. Nothing else connects us. It's the power of the resurrected Christ that holds us and bonds us together. And the church often forgets this, and we try to hold ourselves together by the usual human glue. We make rules. We devise bylaws. We make creeds that everybody's supposed to believe. We adopt dress codes so we will all look alike, talk alike, and smell alike. Like the musical taught us, it's okay to be different. Why? Because the church is the church when we realize, when we recognize, and when we rejoice in the fact that the only reason we are here, and the only thing that binds and holds us together is the resurrected Christ. You believe that? It's the power of Christ that holds us together. So you want proof? 30 children presented the musical, actually 22, I don't know where the other 8 were. 30 children presented us a musical. 30 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade children, led by CAPS teachers and workers. 30 children, did you notice, from Hispanic, African American, Hmong, Filipino, and Caucasian backgrounds. 30 children bonded together. How? By the resurrected Jesus Christ. You want proof? William Williman, chaplain of Duke University, was speaking at Concordia College in Minnesota. He was asked, well, what proof do we have of the resurrection? Well, he just finished having a conversation with a young pastor who was having a difficult time struggling with a rural congregation in North Dakota. So he said, proof? The only proof I have at the moment of the resurrection is that next Sunday, out in a remote crossroads somewhere in North Dakota, a young pastor will stand up and preach to about 30 North Dakota farm families. She will do so despite the fact that her church is not growing, despite the fact that no one will thank her after the service, despite the fact that she receives a pitifully small salary for it, and very little affirmation from her mostly passive and taciturn congregation. Midwest folks. He said, she and her sermon are the proof we have of the resurrection. I'm going to tell this anyway. An 11-year-old boy was brought to church by Nadine. They were neighbors at the time, our church. She took him to breakfast first because he was hungry. He came forward to pray at the altar that Sunday, and during the invitation time, when I asked him how I could help him pray, and he said, I want to pray for my dad, who is in prison. Several Sundays later, he and his cousin were pouring lots of cream and sugar into cups of coffee at the fellowship time, and Ellie asked them if they were hungry. She took them back to her Sunday school room and fed them remains of the Seder dinner the Seder meal that her class had enjoyed. Last Sunday, Easter Sunday, he came forward for a blessing. He said, today is my birthday. But during the previous week, Doug Boyster brought in 2 bicycles for us to give to kids who needed them. So at the altar last Easter Sunday, on his birthday, after she gave him a blessing, Jody asked if he would like a bicycle for his birthday present. You would have to look far and wide to find a happier boy with bigger eyes. My people, we have a church here. Amen. We have a church. And that's the proof of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Because Christ is moving in our midst, and God is doing marvelous things here, because Christ is risen.
Christ is risen indeed.
Ah, you're good. You're good. You want proof? From email sent by Debbie, mother of the girl I baptized a week ago Saturday evening here in the social hall, a little 4-year-old girl, and she announced spontaneously, I'm a princess. Her mother sent me this email. You want proof? This is written by Danny Dutton, age 8, from Chula Vista, California, for his 3rd grade homework assignment to explain God. He's 8 years old. One of God's main jobs is making people. He makes them to replace the ones that die, so there will be enough people to take care of things on earth. He doesn't make grown-ups, just babies. I think because they're smaller and easier to make. That way he doesn't have to to take up his valuable time teaching them to talk and walk because he can just leave that to mothers and fathers. God's second most important job is listening to prayers. An awful lot of this goes on. Since some people, like preachers and things, pray at times beside bedtime. God sees everything and hears everything and is everywhere, which keeps him pretty busy. So you shouldn't go wasting his time by going over your mom and dad's head asking for something they said you couldn't have. Atheists are people who don't believe in God. I don't think there are any in Chula Vista. At least there aren't any who come to our church. Jesus is God's Son. He used to do all the hard work, like walking on water and performing miracles and trying to teach the people who didn't want to learn about God. They finally got tired of him preaching to them, and they crucified him. But he was good and kind like his Father, and he told his Father that they didn't know what they were doing and to forgive them. And God said, okay. His dad, that is Jesus' dad, God, appreciated everything that Jesus had done and all his hard work on earth, so he told him he didn't have to go out on the road anymore. He could stay in heaven. So he did. And now, Jesus helps his dad out by listening to prayers and seeing things which are important for God to take care of, and which ones he can take care of himself without having to bother God. Like a secretary, only more important. You can pray anytime you want, and they are sure to hear you because they got it worked out, so one of them is on duty at all times. You should always go to church on Sunday because it makes God happy. And if there's anybody you want to make happy, it's God. Don't skip church to do something you think will be more fun, like going to the beach. This is wrong. And besides, the sun doesn't come out at the beach until noon anyway. If you don't believe in God, besides being an atheist, you will be very lonely. Because your parents can't go everywhere with you, like to camp. But God can. It is good to know He's around you when you're scared in the dark. Or when you can't swim very good and you get thrown into real deep water by big kids. But you shouldn't just always think of what God can do for you. I figure God put me here, and He can take me back anytime He pleases. And that's why I believe in God. You want proof? One week after Easter, the disciples were gathered together, and this time Thomas was with them. Although the door was shut, Jesus came and stood in their midst. And Jesus said, "Shalom, peace be with you." Shalom. Wouldn't you like to have seen Thomas's face? He who proclaimed, "Well, I want proof. Unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands and put my finger in the mark of the nails and my hand in his side, I will not believe." Now he's face to face with Jesus. I wonder what expression was on Jesus' face. Impatience, exasperation, disgust, or compassion? I prefer to think Jesus looked at Thomas with love and infinite patience. "Thomas," he said, "put your finger here and see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it in my side. Do not doubt," he said, "but believe." Thomas wanted proof, And the ultimate proof, the ultimate evidence of the resurrection is a personal experience with the resurrected, risen Christ. Thomas, in humility and awe, responded, "My Lord and my God." Notice, not the Lord, not even our Lord, but my. Very personal. My Lord and my God. We sang, "You ask me how I know he lives. He lives." Where? Good. That's the proof. He lives within my heart. I don't care what scholars dispute. I don't care what skeptics say, because I know Jesus. And Jesus walks with me and talks with me. And sure, I have honest doubts, but faith is not the absence of doubt. That's not faith. Faith doesn't mean you never have a doubt. Faith means the presence of courage. Courage to believe in spite of the doubts. Courage to reach out and trust. Courage to live my life. Courage to face tomorrow. And our closing hymn is going to be, "Because he lives, I can face tomorrow." Christ is risen.